Recently, the Harris campaign had an interview with Fox News.
For the time.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Brett.
You know, voters tell pollsters all over the country and here in Pennsylvania that immigration is one of the key issues that
I felt that Kamala did pretty well given the obviously hostile nature of the interview. Actually, the tone of the interviewer was very professional, but it was certainly hardball reporting. One of the things that really annoys me about politics and politicians is when they won't answer a question.
illegal immigrants from more than 150 countries. How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right
do you,
now,
just a
which
number,
is,
do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Brett, let's just get to the point, okay? The point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your Homeland Security Secretary said that 85% of apprehensions.
I'm not finished. We have
it's a
an
rough
immigration
estimate of 6 million people have been released into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get to the question, I promise you.
I was beginning to answer.
And when you came into office, your administration immediately reversed a number of Trump border.
So I hate when asked a direct question, politicians sort of dance around and go to their talking points. Just answer the question. Say you don't know if you don't know the exact number. Say 6 million if that's the exact number. So what are the facts on the illegal immigration situation in the United States? As per testimony before the U.S. Congress by Robert Rector, who is a senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation, in 2023, there were 3,201,144, so 3 million encounters between inadmissible aliens and the U.S. government nationwide. In 2016, there were 700,000 such encounters. So a 460% increase in encounters between illegal immigrants and the U.S. government. Like, that could be a lot of things. So what he's talking about is nationwide encounters are the sum of CBP encounters across all areas of responsibility, including northern land border, southwestern land border, OFO, non-land borders, ports of entry, basically all encounters between illegal aliens and customs agents, border patrol agents. So the fact that this has increased so dramatically, 460%, means a lot more illegal immigrants are coming into the United States. Continuing with that testimony, there was an admission by Homeland Security Secretary that 85% of encounters with inadmissible aliens result in releases. Right now, there's something between 10 and 20 million illegal immigrants in the United States. The interviewer went on to question Kamala Harris about illegal immigrants and crime.
U.S. or in Mexico. And you switched that policy. They were released from custody awaiting trial. So instead, included in those were a large number of single men, adult men, who went on to commit heinous crimes. So looking back, do you regret the decision to terminate remain in Mexico?
I don't think there's a lot of evidence that illegal immigrants commit crime at a higher rate than domestic Americans. Of course, out of millions of people, some are going to be criminals, whether they're immigrants or they were born in the country. And by focusing on a few anecdotal stories, you can paint a narrative as if there's a serious problem where there might not necessarily be one. On the other hand, it's not necessarily that easy to measure the crime rate among illegal aliens. I mean, you can't even say for certain what the population of the illegal alien uh, people, how many illegal aliens are in the United States. Any statistical data is guesswork at the best of times. Of course, all illegal aliens are technically criminals because they've immigrated illegally, but that's not really the issue. What's important is, what percent of the illegal alien population commits serious violent crimes or is involved in drug trafficking. There's also a selection bias at play in that uh, drug cartels have a vested interest in illegal border crossings and getting their drugs into America undetected, which is the same thing that illegal aliens are doing. So it makes sense that there might be some connection there. Or illegal aliens might be used as mules in exchange for passage. That's just conjecture. There was a report from Doctors Without Borders that female migrants were frequently the victim of crime, in particular while trying to cross the Darien Gap in between Colombia and Panama. I mean, anytime you're involving the black market, you're involving the criminal element. So a lot of crimes committed by illegal aliens and towards illegal aliens might go underreported because of the clandestine nature of their existence. One of the things I hate most about political discourse in America and elsewhere is how unsubstantive it is. Take a look at Kamala defending her economic policies.
As have been reviewed by 16 Nobel laureates, Goldman Sachs, Moody's, and recently the Wall Street Journal, which have all studied our plans and have indicated my plans for our economy would strengthen our economy.
Maybe a hostile interview with Fox News isn't the best place to break down the minutia of your policy points. But I, for one, would prefer a little more meat and potatoes when it comes to, break down what the proposal is, how it would work, what are the problems of your opponent's proposal, not 20 Nobel laureates and 50 professors from Harvard and Yale think my plan's the best. That is not, to me, a convincing argument. Incidentally, I looked through Kamala Harris's economic proposals, and while I may not be a Nobel laureate like George Akerlof, Edmund Phelps, or Joseph Stiglitz, who were three of the economists to endorse the Kamala Harris economic plan, I was not impressed with it. It seemed like a lot of government spending without too much finesse. There were some okay ideas, expanding tax credits. Actually, I think it's quite telling that the establishment clearly favors Kamala Harris over Donald Trump. I mean, Kamala Harris is the quintessential establishment woman, if you will. Her whole career, aside from a brief stint in the Senate, was as a prosecutor, the accusing voice of the state. The next part of the interview was pretty good.
Last week, what, if anything, you would do differently than President Biden? Here's what you said.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Under a Harris administration, what would the major changes be, and what would stay the same?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm obviously not Joe Biden.
I noticed.
And so that would be one change in terms of
Yes.
But also, I think it's important to say with 28 days to go, I'm not Donald Trump.
So you're not Joe Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
Let me be very clear. My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. And like every new president that comes in to office, I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas. I represent a new generation of leadership.
I don't think Kamala Harris is particularly ideological. And that's one of the things that the establishment like about her. She's completely willing to go along to get along, to preserve the status quo, because under the American system, the president does wield considerable power. He can veto, he's the commander in chief, and with executive orders, he can essentially pass laws. The modern imperial presidency is a far cry from how the office of the president was originally intended to function by the American founders. So having somebody who is unpredictable as president, and whatever you want to say about Donald Trump, I think we can all agree he is unpredictable. That's dangerous to the establishment, which has an extreme interest in the status quo and its preservation. Of course, Camilla did take opportunity of the chance to attack Donald Trump in the interview. It seems like that's mostly what politicians are good at these days, attacking their opponents. Instead of providing different ideological perspectives or presenting different philosophies and ideas on how government should function, it's really about painting your opponent in a bad light, calling them names, and making accusations.
His rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy an enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So,
Brett, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Here's Donald Trump talking about the enemy within.
Joe Biden said he doesn't think it's going to be a peaceful election day.
Well, he doesn't have any idea what's happening in all fairness. He spends most of his day sleeping. I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within, not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. By the way, totally destroying our country. The towns, the villages, they're being inundated. But I don't think they're the problem in terms of election day. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen.
How are you going to guard against the bureaucrats undermining you?
Well, they're going to undermine. Well, I always say, so we have two enemies. We have the outside enemy, and then we have the enemy from within. And the enemy from within, in my opinion, is more dangerous than China, Russia, and all these countries, because if you have a smart president, he can handle them pretty easily. I got along great with all. I handled them.
It seems like Donald Trump was talking about some sort of fifth column among the American people, radical leftists that are trying to harm him and his political campaign. or do something.
That he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has.
I don't think, at least from the previous clip, I haven't seen that much of Trump's campaign rhetoric. I don't think he was talking about using the military on the American people, but more like safeguarding the electoral process. Like if a massive crowd of BLM activists or whatever marched on Washington, like that's what his comments evoked in my mind. It seems like she's trying to claim that he wants some sort of Stalin-esque police crackdown on the public, which that seems like complete fantasy. I mean, we saw the Trump presidency already, and there was none of that. I think that Democrats often are intellectually dishonest and trying to interpret Trump's remarks in the worst possible light. They try to paint him as a fascist would-be dictator. And Trump does make a lot of controversial statements. He uses language that can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. And this might be part strategy on his part because it really does seem like fear mongering and come across as desperate when the Democrats make these wild claims about Trump. One thing I found kind of amusing was the following statement that Kamala made.
Transnational criminal organizations, from the Sinaloa cartel to the Guadalajara cartel to people who have trafficked in guns, drugs, and human beings. I have spent a significant part of my career going after people who present a threat to the safety of the American people and cross our border with the intent of doing us harm and cross our border illegally, and I will.
So to me, the subtext there was, hey, I'm as anti-Mexican as anybody else. Anyway, kudos to Kamala for taking such a hardball interview. She didn't come across great in it, but I don't think anybody would have. And politically, I think it was a smart move to show that she could walk into the lion's den and handle the sort of heat, especially because she is considered, I think, a little bit of a lightweight. Nobody really expected her to become president, or I mean, she hasn't became president yet, but to get to the stage where she is now, a coin toss away from the presidency, essentially.